We're good to go.
Okay, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the fourth webinar in the webinar series brought to you by the NSE Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I am Reina Tagalikut from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and today's webinar is on civic and community engagement on exchange. So we'll be learning how NSE students and campus communities can engage and benefit from community work while on NSE. So the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee thought this was an important topic to cover because civic engagement and service learning combines learning by connecting course content with service projects that help the community. And it's a powerful way for students to understand course material by learning from experience. Civic engagement on exchange can be especially meaningful because students may gain a broader perspective on how their service mutually benefits themselves and the community in a different location or culture or with different populations of people. So we are so honored to have our three panelists here with us today. So from the Atherton branch of the YMCA of Honolulu, we have Executive Director Cassidy Inamasu. Then we have Patty Neiman, who is Director of Educational Efficacy and Leadership at the University of Minnesota. And our third speaker, I'm not sure if anyone knows him, David Holliday. He is Assistant Director for Domestic Off-Campus Study at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and our very own Vice President of NSE. So today's format is we have some questions that the committee has prepared for the panelists. So I'll read off the question and then we'll have each panelist speak about that question. So question number one is, what are the benefits and challenges of community engagement for NSE students? And who would like to go first for our panelists?
I can start us off here. Some of you may know, but my other hat, so I'm based at the University of Minnesota and I'm housed in the department called the Center for Community Engaged Learning. So for about 15 years, half of my work other than NSE is relating to community work here in the Twin Cities, helping U of M students gain experience off campus. I've partnered with Patty Neiman at the University Y, which is just off campus for many years, but I also always encourage my NSE students, those incoming students especially, to engage in community work, because I think it's such a valuable experience. Coming to a campus is a unique experience. It's experiential education, but I think connecting students with off-campus organizations is very valuable as well, for them to get a new perspective on the community, the place that they are. Our campus is very giant. We're a city within a city, and there are town gown issues that and power differentials and things between the university and the local community. And so I think getting students off campus to experience the Twin Cities from from the community perspective is really valuable. To learn more about the place, the culture.
I'm in a meeting.
To learn more about the place, the culture, the people, and get something besides just sitting in the classroom. I also, and I'll say also, I encourage my outgoing students to always get involved in local community, partly because I believe in it. That's again, my other hat on my campus. But I think connecting with local people, local communities is always so important to gain that perspective and really enrich their academics and their NSE experience in general.
Yes, thank you, David. And I'm so sorry. I was excited to get started that I just jumped into the first question and I forgot for you guys to do introductions. So thank you, David. Maybe we can do introductions for the other two panelists first. So Patty, would you mind going next?
Sure. You want me to just introduce or answer the question both?
Actually, why don't we do both? We'll do an introduction and then the first question.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Thanks for inviting us today. It's really, a great opportunity to bring people together who all are working toward a similar goal, which is really supporting college student development within a lot of different contexts. So even though Cassidy and I work for the YMCA, everything we live and breathe and do is supporting young adult development. So it's really fun for us to be with people who we normally wouldn't be working with and to kind of open that door. As David mentioned, we've partnered for quite a long time. My work in the YMCA started 11 years ago. I actually came out of working in higher ed at the U of M for about 23 years. One of, a big passion of mine is engaging students in experiential-based learning. And so coming into the Y, it really opened the door for me to provide that in partnership with the University of Minnesota, but also in the greater community. So really giving students, recognizing that, as David said, the University of Minnesota is a town of its own that has seemingly everything, but not everything for all, right? And so the YMCA is a really great partner, I think, with the University of Minnesota, where students like NSE students can come and immediately find a place to belong. There's no membership fees. It's literally the building behind me. It's welcoming and diverse and inclusive. And so we can really look to, provide that immediate space to belong and then provide service opportunities for our students. So it's been called a home away from home, a family, things like that. But I think really the strength of partnerships and really demonstrating that to young adults is a really critical developmental piece that we can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Cassidy?
Yeah, so good morning from us. I'm also, of course, here in Honolulu, Hawaii. But again, Cassidy Namasu, I'm the director at the Atherton Y. And, it's funny, we were chatting right before because I started at Atherton maybe about 4 or 5 months before the pandemic got crazy. So I was joking with them that I like to say I've only really been there for a few months now, but it's been such a pleasure. Atherton YMCA, just like just like Patty and the University Y there, we're one of maybe I think 6 or 7 left in the country that are still exist as specific campus YMCAs in our movement. And so we're very lucky and fortunate to be able to continue this specific work. At Atherton, we serve anywhere from middle school through college age students. And when it comes to the college age students, it's not just about, career exploration, but it's really providing these hands-on skills that they can build their resume, connecting them with community, giving them service opportunities. But then, through all of that, they then decide how they want to serve community, right? So we just coach them and say, if you got to do 50 hours of service, what do you want to accomplish in that 50 hours of service, and how can that beef up your resume? So it's very interesting to see all the things that we end up doing just because the students have all these different interests. So that's us at Atherton Y. So again, focusing on middle school through college age students, but crazy to see what we're diving into esports right now. We've been doing early ed circle time, elementary enrichment, and it's all because the college students have these specific passions. So so that's a little bit about us.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, sorry, David and I were chatting because we're trying to figure out how to present the slides that some panelists shared. So David, would you like me to go to the next question and then share your slide?
Well, let's, sorry, quick conversation between Raina and I online. Should we have Patty go ahead and share her slides, just kind of the overview of the YMCA, University Y here? Cassidy, if you wanted to talk more specifically about your programs, and then I can talk more about my U of M work, and then we can proceed with the other questions, Raina, that the committee had.
Okay. Okay.
Is that okay?
That's perfect. Yes, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, it's okay. It's my fault completely.
Patty, are you okay sharing your screen now and your slides?
I'll unmute myself so you can hear me, and then I will share my screen as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we'll get this on the right slide. And I'm thinking you all can see, is that correct?
Looks
Okay, Great, Cassidy, we got matching. So wanted to take a few minutes because some people don't know about university YMCAs. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the small but mighty community that we work across the United States in partnership to provide this opportunity for college students. So there's currently, there are several campus-wide still up and running, and you can see by the dates that we have a really long history of a campus-wide movement. And so campus-wise of the past, there was about 1,000 campus-wise across the United States. They were invited onto a college campus to really serve the unmet need of those college students. And as you can imagine, a college student community in 1887 was predominantly white men at the University of Minnesota. And so who we were, the YMCA, and who we've become has really transformed over many years. We are the predecessor to Student Affairs. So even though the U of M is a small town now, it used to be just a few buildings where people came to learn. Our YMCA in Minneapolis actually looked quite different back then. It had, it's offered a residential hall. It's offered a lot of different pieces to provide support for students, including was the original freshman camp came out of the YMCA. The first student directory and handbook came out of the YMCA. It offered financial, spiritual, career, and eventually social justice allyship, but really a place to belong for many, many years. And of course, over the years, as things changed on a college campus, there wasn't a need. And the Y is really traditionally going to be in a place where there's unmet need. We have strengthened our campus-wide community, those of us that are still working together to make sure we continue to work across community and universities to provide that space. So really interesting, long history of campus-wide movement. This is our university YMCA, that's me. That was me chalking the sidewalks when I realized my college students would be graduating and there would be no ceremony. So I literally chalked the sidewalk of every single name of my student who would be graduating and invited them to come down and take photos. So our vision at the UI, we center the voices and needs of young adults and connect campus to community, co-creating solutions to the most pressing issues of our time. So we do that by activating cause-driven young adult change makers on campus and in the community. We create pathways from K through college with youth and local communities through mentoring and advance equity in education through college retention and success for underrepresented students. At the UI, we focus on the young adult and lean into transitions, or what some people call gaps, but I call them transitions between the from and the to. And so if you think about our students are coming from and they're going to someplace, and in between there, they're at the UI. And so we're talking about a lot of different dimensions. And it's why we use the language young adult rather than just student. So we talk about identity development, family, relationships, career, finances, and education. And all those dimensions, as you all know from your programs, all the life experiences that are happening, including college, are continuing to shape who they're becoming. So we really work in that transition period. We do that by providing growth through leadership and service opportunities. So we don't really care what your major is, which I love to say after working in higher ed for 23 years. We're really driven by experience, and through those experiences as becoming authentic leaders where your words and actions are in alignment, having equity and impact, working on teams, being role models, really focused on diversity and inclusivity is really the fields where that happens, where we provide these growth experiences. Believing in their potential and let them know it as often as possible is how I live my work, especially through periods of growth. We talk about there's no comfort in that growth place. You're gonna experience not knowing what you need to know and having to figure that out. And so we provide a lot of opportunity to do it. Believe It, Achieve It is a theme that we use in our Achievers program, which supports students who identify as underrepresented. Everything that I do, and everything I do is literally in partnership, not only with the University of Minnesota, but school districts in the Twin Cities, community centers in the Twin Cities. And it really takes creating that wraparound opportunity for growth and development. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's not about the end result, it's about what you did on the way. And so one of our students shared that the university-wide space was where they grew professionally and personally. The students and the staff created an environment where they wanted to be the best version of themselves and where they could learn from mistakes like the rest of us, but be supported through that process. So this particular student served as a youth mentor and really, was encouraged not only to step out, but did step out of that comfort zone. And back in pre-COVID days, this is one of our student groups that served in an after-school program. So we send out normally into the community, but this year completely virtually, worked in partnership across the Twin Cities, providing access for young people to know our students and for our students to be impacted by the lives of young people. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Patty. Cassidy, I know you already spoke a little bit about the Atherton Y, but was there anything else that you wanted to add before we go into the questions?
I think the only thing I would add is that, even within those campus YMCAs, we're staying connected and strong, and there's opportunity for connection there as well. So we had students, actually, Patty and I both had students who have gone back and forth, through NSE and through other opportunities too, during like spring break and things like that. And so, it's all, like Patty said, it really is about experiential learning and just being able to connect the classroom and community and culture, and be that middle person, be that connection for them, and kind of support all the work that you folks are doing and that the students are getting from their college experience. So but Patty definitely highlighted it extremely well, and a lot better than I could have. And we just all have different programs and services that really align to that. So thank you, Patty.
Yes, thank you, Cassidy. And David, you had some slides that you wanted to go over?
I do. So I just wanted to share a little bit more about my office, or the other half of my office at the University of Minnesota. Does the screen share look okay here, or do I need to actually go into present mode? Probably. Does this look okay?
It's the presenter view, but it's okay.
Let me swap displays. Always technical difficulties with me.
There we go.
Well, I do want to take this opportunity again. I think most of you know me through NSE, but I do have, NSE is half my job. The other half is based at the University of Minnesota in the office called Center for Community Engaged Learning. These are my other colleagues, my non-NSE colleagues that I, in normal times, see every day in the office. In our office, we are home to National Student Exchange, as well as HECUA domestic off-campus study programs. These are sort of the off-campus study experiential learning, studying away from campus especially, but we also run community engaged classes, volunteer advising, and we have a scholars program for students that do significant community work. So we offer place-based educational programs focusing on experiential education. I do want to do a land acknowledgement. This is something my office does a lot and feels really important. It's a long statement here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I do want to point out the map on the left actually is a local artist that really did a great job of capturing the Twin Cities is on Dakota land. This was treaty, U.S. government treated land that gave this land to sovereign Dakota Nation that my campus and Patty's building as well is based on. So it's a really nice map, I think. Land acknowledgement statement's really important for our office as well, not just to acknowledge the land that we're on, but the fact that it was treaty treated land that we still occupy. The treaties have been broken. And we do this, the land acknowledgement purpose here, first as members of the scholarly community dedicated to furthering knowledge, we recognize an obligation to know the history of our own institution and of the geographical area in which we're situated. Second, as practitioners and advocates of community engagement, we see the events of the past continuing to play out today in the vast racial inequities plaguing our state and every issue our work addresses: housing, health, education, environmental quality, and more. Knowing Minnesota's colonial history can help deepen our understanding of systemic racism and historical trauma as root causes of current social realities, enabling us to more effectively work for community equity. So this is really at the heart of the work that we do. So we are one of the offices that connect students with off-campus organizations. We do general volunteer advising. We have a couple hundred organizations that we partner with and know quite a bit about. We help connect students. Our office really feels strongly about community work needs to be long-term and sustained partnership. Our office does not sponsor any of the day of service activities and things. That's more of our student activities office. We're more about long-term sustained partnership. We also do community engaged learning. So we work with faculty to incorporate a service component into the curriculum of their class. These are just a handful of the classes that we routinely work with throughout the semester. So we partner with faculty to identify usually 4 or 5 organizations or projects that students can work with in the community that also addresses the themes of the course. And these are, we support about 130 classes each year. Reflection is really critical to, I think most people that think about critical service learning, especially, reflection needs to be a strong piece of it. So we provide reflection themes that we encourage all of our students to think about and reflect on. We facilitate reflection through pre-service trainings in all of our community engaged learning courses, as well as the structured themes of our scholars program, the Community Engagement Scholars Program. I've listed some of the reflection questions that we either present to students directly, or we encourage our faculty. So our office does a lot of faculty training as well, encouraging them to learn how to provide adequate space and time for reflection to happen within the classroom. So we don't think community work should happen just exclusively outside the classroom. It needs to be brought back into the classroom through reflection and written assignments. So some of the questions are here. All of these are listed on our website as well. So if anyone wants to see kind of behind the screen a little bit of what we do with community work. The other thing that our office does is we really think about community work as a critical approach. We want students to think beyond the superficial benefits that the students, as well as the community, receive through community work. Try to get away from the helping language, but really encourage students to think about their community work as having the potential to create social change. So it's about looking at the systemic issues that perpetuate some of these social problems that is really necessitating the community work that is happening in schools, in government, in communities. So this is the social change wheel, which was formed by Minnesota Campus Compact many years ago. Campus Compact is a national, I think international organization actually, that does a really nice job of talking about community work in serious, critical ways. So this shows that community work can happen in many different ways. That's what the outside of the circle is. So we talk a lot about students. If they're not interested in direct service, there's lots of different ways to be involved in the community and to do community work towards social change. So you can read those around the outside. I'm happy to share this slide with others too. The change that was made to the social change wheel this past year actually relates to the middle circles. So the middle circle is how community work can be done in partnership with campus-based strategies. Many of us are based on campuses, of course, and so connecting the work, the community work, campus-based strategies is important. And then the newest thing that was added is that all of these efforts towards community work and campus-based strategies must center anti-racism, equity, and co-creation in partnership with community at the center. And so that's really a little glimpse into community work promoted through our office, the Center for Community Engaged Learning. And I will also echo that what Patty and Cassidy said is that, let's see, where did my screen go? I'm going to stop my share here. That's, connecting students with community work, I think, is so valuable. I think the University YMCA and Atherton do such a great job of helping students have community amongst other students, amongst other peers, but also engaging in that off-campus experiences that give them a really deep and rich experience in a new community, or community possibly that's new to them. So that's all I got from my office.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, David. Okay, so we'll get into the next question that we have prepared for you. How can NSE coordinators prepare students for civic engagement on exchange? Any of the panelists would like to go first?
Patty or Cassidy, I'll ask you a quick question. What sort of training do you do for students that are entering, your sites off campus or in the community? Is there anything that's relevant to that'd be especially relevant to NSE students that are in a new city on a new campus entering the community?
I mean, one of the advantages for Cassidy and I for the Atherton Y and the UI is we can recruit students to do NSE, and they can know Cassidy before they even go to Hawaii. So I think, the relationship piece, creating that village around a student. So if people in NSE are thinking, I'm going to be sending some students to the Twin Cities, they could actually meet me long before they come to Minneapolis. And I think those relationships really matter, and you create, some open space for conversation. I can have my students talk with other students anywhere in the United States, for that matter, share their not only U of M experience, but their Campus Y experience. So I think, removing the barrier of like the fear of not knowing is a great opportunity. We do every semester, we engage our students in a lot of different, not only service opportunities, but leadership development opportunities. We do, fundraising with our students. We normally do a fall and spring cleanup. We do a Friendsgiving. So there's a lot of more social kind of based events that also happen that help acclimate. We have short-term and long-term opportunities. So I think just making those connections and opening the doors for students long before they get to our campus would be a really critical piece. It just, bringing a human into it makes a big difference from a website description.
And I think the only thing that I would add to that, because 100% the same, I think, just the relationships are so critical, but I think for, I love the map that you shared, David, and getting people to recognize, the idea of where the campus actually sits and the history behind that, because Hawaii is very similar in that regard, right? Being very mindful of the local culture. So I think those are like little things that could help prepare the student to be successful from day one, right? Especially if they're going to be kind of interacting with students that are Native or Indigenous peoples, and there is this sensitivity around, certain local culture and practice, so I think that's an opportunity, is to use it not just as a teaching tool or teaching opportunity, but one to open the doors, really, right, and get them interested and excited, because the idea of equity and racism and, being mindful and respectful of Indigenous people, like these are all such hot topics that it's a good opportunity for them to say, I could live that experience. I can go and connect and learn through this process. So really making it more about just being able to travel, so kind of letting them know that there's these opportunities there for learning. So I do agree with Patty 100%. The relationships beforehand you know, and breaking down those barriers of unknown, but also that cultural piece and getting them a little bit aware of that before they even show up. So.
Yeah. And if I can add one thing to that, the cultural piece, you know, many of us who work with National Student Exchange, or at least when I think about National Student Exchange, it truly is or can be an intercultural experience going from state to state. Of course, from Minnesota to Hawaii, huge cultural, you know, cultural difference, cultural shift. But when I do the pre-service trainings for students that are just going to be volunteering off campus, you know, a mile away from our campus, I also talk about this being an intercultural experience. You know, what borders are you crossing, you know, to go from here to Hawaii or from here to, you know, Montana or other places that NSE sends students to. But there are borders that people cross even doing community work in your same city. So the social borders, the educational borders, the cultural borders that exist, you know, even in the microscopic sense. And so that's the real connection I make between NSE and community work, honestly.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. I just wanted to add as well, I appreciated how Patty was talking about students could have a connection with her or somebody before they even get there. And I remember a few years ago, we had 3 students from UHM that went, they went to the UI, there was a camp and they talked about a ropes course and they really enjoyed doing that because it was over summer before the semester started and they got to know the area and other people there. And it was a really meaningful experience for them. I remember them talking about that a lot. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. How can NSE coordinators connect students with meaningful co-curricular activities? Like, where's a good starting point?
So I think for us, you know, I think this is a good starting point, you know, to just say it so plainly, right? Connecting with others that, I mean, it's not rocket science, I don't think, for anyone in this group, right? But connecting them with folks that are also invested in the community and, you know, because that's also our mission, right? So everything that David talked about and showed, right? Those are all the same things that we're aligned with. And I think that's why when I moved to Atherton, Raina and I kind of hit it off and said, oh my gosh, we could like do all of this. There's so much opportunity here. You know, and just from the students connecting in social events to, you know, them coming to our service projects. And then for our offices, which are both small teams, you know, we could be able to share that workload and make an even more meaningful impact on these students. So I think it is finding out, you know, who else in the community is already doing that work. And if you don't have a Campus Y on your campus, I'm sure there's a YMCA. They're always looking for staff to work with kids, to work in their pools, to work in their fitness facilities. But they, you know, even during COVID, right, they've switched gears so much around feeding the community and providing senior assistance and so many different community efforts that they need volunteers. So, you know, even if you don't have a Campus Y, I'm sure there's a YMCA that or another nonprofit that you could connect with. So I think that's a start. And you know, the other part is I appreciated how David shared his work with the faculty on campus, because that's been our kind of strategy, is not just working with different offices on campus, right, around student affairs like NSE, but the different departments on campus, right? Do they have to do an internship or a practicum? And, you know, chances social work. We have, I think, 11 or 12 social work students right now, each needing to do 200 somewhat hours a semester. So, you know, those are opportunities, I think, even on campus to look at. So, but that would be my kind of 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it makes sense to have that connection within a university, David, like you shared today, the office that you work with, because they have a relationship with so many external partners that if every university had a place like that, which they might, I don't know, that seems like a really good, important connection for NSE people to see what's in that university in terms of the current model of community engagement. I mean, the University of Minnesota is so ginormous, right? And so where do you even begin? And, just knowing who are those people that are already connected to the community feels like a really smart beginning place. And I think, I don't mind connecting people to people in YMCAs and other places. I don't know everyone, there's thousands of Ys, but we definitely have the channels to reach out, and there are many YMCAs beyond the Campus Y model that are definitely engaging college students, in part-time jobs and whatnot. That's a couple thoughts. I think I'm on LinkedIn. Cassidy's on LinkedIn. I mean, you can always link and connect your students to us via LinkedIn as well. I use LinkedIn a lot. I make sure all my students are on it and ask them to, make those connections to other professionals. I think utilizing some of those resources are really important. And then, depending, I would say, what the students' interests are in terms of civic engagement, if it is an internship or whatever it might be. I mean, I have a lot of public health graduate students. The work around being anti-racist is a public health issue. And so it just kind of depends on the lens people are looking through to think about how they might serve community. And as Cassidy mentioned earlier, and I see this as really a normal part of a conversation is, what have you done so far? What else do you need to build out in your resume and your experience? Regardless again of your major, is such an important question. And then looking to that community to say, well, what is in that community and what are ways that we might be able to provide you those connections so that you can continue to build during that 4+ year experience of your own development. And, I just tell people all the time, college students have to focus on themselves. That's normal. And so that should be part of the conversation is what have you done and where could we still offer you some growth?
I think the only thing I'll add is what Patty and Cassidy both said is connect with the people that are doing the work. Most campuses have some sort of volunteer office or, and so one thing I do with my incoming students during orientation is I do talk to them about getting involved in the local community. Campus Y and Patty's programs are one that I highlight always. So do that, build that into your orientation for those students that you've hosted, that you are hosting on exchange. Campus partnerships, just broad awareness of NSE as an opportunity. I think every office on campus that has some sort of tangential connection to what NSE offers, I think, knock on their door or send them an email so they're aware of this program. And, if there are students interested in service work here locally, they may be even more interested to do service work in a completely new place. And that's what NSE can help facilitate.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one more prepared question before we open it up for questions from the attendees. So how can we prepare students so it's a mutually beneficial relationship in which both the student and community benefits?
So I think something that always kind of resides with me is I never even thought this was a thing. It was just kind of something I guess we've learned at the Y, and like kind of the idea of listening and helping people develop themselves. But just the idea of asking them what they want to accomplish, what they want, not having a package deal. And they're shooting through some things, but every student that comes through our doors, we just ask them, what are you coming for? What do you hope to accomplish? What do you need? After your time with us, what do you envision that looking like? Of a longer onboarding process to help more about the community. Being an organization that might be tackling public health issues, right? That might be, so that conversation really helps to open their eyes and see the Y as a large organization, but also the partnerships that the Y already has. And so how they can already be out there in the community. And if there's nothing that's already formed, we give them the goal, you know, and we kind of step out of their way. We just become a supportive role, allow them to network, you know, connect them with folks that we might know in the community. And from there, they really spend that time because now they're a little bit more passionate about their time that they're going to be spending with us. And they have this like their own self-drive and motivation to, you know, to make the best of that experience. And so through that, not only do they benefit, but then our office benefits. And then whatever, if it's a partnership, there's other organizations that are also kind of benefiting. So I would say really have that, you know, take that little extra time in the beginning to really ask, what do you hope to get out of this? We even break it down and say, okay, how many hours do you need to serve, right? Because that really puts a, wow, I'm going to spend 50 hours here, or I'm going to spend 100 hours here. You know, then they really start thinking about their time with us a little bit different. And if there is no, you know, set amount of time, then just kind of pulling them in little by little. And again, saying, here's some of the things that you can experience, and here's some of the other things that you can create, right? So.
Thank you, Cassidy.
Yeah, I'll just add, I love that language about, you know, asking students what they want, what they need, because yes, there should be some, you know, some reciprocity, both parties benefiting. And then, you know, what my office really tries to emphasize is also asking the community, you know, the organization itself or the community itself, also what they need or what they want. I think sometimes universities can get into trouble when they come in and assert their, you know, their values or what they think needs to happen in this place. And so, you know, our office's approach and the approach we encourage our students to go in is really, you know, open-handed. What do you need? What can we offer? How can we, you know, work on this together? So I would say that'd be one thing that I would focus on when you're building new partnerships or encouraging students to get off campus.
I often see students come in for one reason, but it's not why they stay. They often stay because they're looking for a place to belong. And so I think, you know, our community and other communities can really support retention in a way that maybe a university can't. And so, you know, seeing that purpose of an off-campus experience, or in another state experience for this, but you know, I think again, learning who you are and how that applies to the world takes time, and I think there are communities that really are better at it than others. But as we all know, some of the tougher experiences teach us a lot about ourselves too, and so it's not to avoid every difficult challenge. And yeah, David, I think that's a really, you know, important thread, that how we work with community is not figuring out what they need and then, you know, just handing out stuff. We actually go into community to listen first. And so all of the partnerships that we have can really demonstrate that importance of listening and learning before, you know, you would go out and assume a particular population of people have a need just because we've read about it or heard about it. And we don't, you know, I think the community piece too, I mean, people said this to a lot to me when I first got into nonprofit work. It was really different culture for me than higher ed is. And I had to learn a different language. And so you have to really know that when you come into different communities for students, it is a different community that has maybe different ways of practice. And nonprofit work, people would say, oh, youth work's really messy. And I'd be like, what do you mean? Well, now I understand, you know, because it's really transformational work. And so we have to be ready to transform as we're serving. And if we're really good listeners and role modeling that for our students, they will also learn that in the process, that really paying attention to those unmet needs is a really critical piece. And so I think, yeah, I mean, there's nothing, Cassidy, I wouldn't agree with what you said, and David, I think, you know, again, to me, it's about a growth experience, and you know, providing that place to belong and be supported through that.
Yes, awesome. Okay, so that was all of our prepared questions, but we're happy now to open it up to questions from the attendees. Oh, okay, so we have a question from Allison. Yay. How has the pandemic changed civic engagement? Good question.
I'll say quickly, completely, really almost all in-person direct service was halted at the University of Minnesota by mandate of the president of our campus. And so very little in-person service. So, but what I think the door was opened then for there to be more type of virtual engagement, and the number of students and the number of classes that we supported this past year went way down because not as many people are interested in virtual engagement, and it's a little bit less tangible. But that's largely what happened. Anything that was on my, again, this is my campus, any in-person experience that a student wanted to have representing the University of Minnesota, so either getting credit for a class, a service learning class, or part of like our scholars program. If they did want to pursue in-person service, there was a petition process they had to go through that went all the way up to an associate VP for approval. And so there was some in-person service that was approved, but very little. And so we do hope that for a return to normalcy somewhat starting in the fall semester, for there to be more opportunities for in-person with strict COVID protocol and safety measures in place. But that was the big change on our campus.
And the only thing I would add is obviously same changes, right? Same struggles and challenges. But you know, the pandemic definitely created more opportunity for our students to showcase their skills and dive into this new world of, you know, this new virtual world as well. So they've developed significantly where, you know, we started doing language lessons, right? Because all the students needed to do was they wanted that experience of getting in front of a group and facilitating. But obviously they couldn't do that with the youngsters and getting them on and all of this. So we said, okay, well, what skills and talents do you have that might serve the community? And we had Korean, we had Filipino, we've had Japanese, and they've been able to facilitate these conversations or these lessons with folks online that's teens anywhere to senior citizens, right? And it's the cutest thing, seeing teens and seniors learning a language next to each other. But then it's so amazing to see it's our college students who are gaining that experience that they initially wanted anyway of facilitating, and being able to share a piece of them as well. So I think it's not ideal being virtual, but it's also created this opportunity for them to look at their own skill sets and what they can offer.
Yeah, I was pretty fearful this fall of how I was going to do my job. And so I had some models in mind, but I also, you know, started using words like pivot a lot. I call it the year of spin-offs. What I started with is not exactly what I ended with. I had community partners who were trying to figure out what they were doing and how to partner. So I think like everybody else, we wanted to offer quality experience. I ended up with 102 students over the course of the school year engaged in virtual service, and it was good quality service. But again, what I started with was not what I ended with. The beauty, I have to say, is one of the spinoffs that we ended up with is a pen pal program. And so 250 young people in our Twin Cities community have a pen pal at the UI. virtually. They're not really at the UI, but so a lot of program development and trial and error. I think if you asked our community partners, we became like the sole partner, like the presence. There was no other presence coming into some of the places that we zoomed into. We were also able to zoom into a small school in Marion, Ohio, and provide support for second graders and reading to them. We zoomed into our Sioux YMCA, which is on the Cheyenne River Reservation in South Dakota, and did a comic book club with the kids. So we went places and spaces that we would not have gotten connected to or served in. And I think for the college students, they found again a way to feel like they could from home connect with other people and places and provide their service to young people and build those relationships. So I'm really impressed with the college students that came to the UI and served. And again, some of them came because they have scholarships that require service. Some of them came because they wanted to utilize work study with our partnership with the U of M. But again, I think they stayed because they felt like they were making a difference during a time where they were so isolated from each other. This was a way to come together in ways I just never could have dreamt of.
And I would add real quick too, kind of listening to David and Patty, it reminded me, we also kind of did pivot a little bit in that we weren't only just doing direct service, right? The students that came on that needed hours were also doing things like community assessments, right? So taking advantage of the opportunity and diving into community, and exactly like we talked about earlier, finding out what does the community actually need right now. So that was opportunities that, really benefited them to, live through the moment and hear from people, but it also benefited us because then we knew how to address it or what needs were most pressing, a month out. And so we looked at it as what kind of things can they do behind the scenes to really help direct our direct services in the coming months. So I would add that too.
So David and Scott had a good conversation going in the chat that I just wanted to bring to the conversation. Unfortunately, there is no way on the NSE website right now for students to search by community engagement opportunities, but perhaps that could be something we could consider for the future. But then David had David, would you like to chime in on what you had written?
Yeah, just like in our own professional fields, NSE and, study abroad and wherever else we're coming at, oftentimes, what other campuses are doing in those campuses that are doing it well. So in my office, I know my boss, my non-NSE boss, Laurel, is a really big fan and good friends with the service learning coordinators at Boise State, at Cal State Monterey Bay, and University of Georgia, all NSE coordinators. They work together on various proposals and share ideas and things. And so, connect with your service learning office or your volunteer office because they likely know of other NSE campuses that are doing a good job of community engagement, building solid partnerships with off-campus organizations and things. So yeah, these are three. I was also looking up a website, Carnegie, the Carnegie Foundation, I think, has a classification for service learning and specifically kind of critical service learning. I know there are some NSE campuses on that list. That might be a place that we can look to kind of have a category of campuses. I know one that we'd invited to be on this panel that wasn't able to make it is Universidad del Sagrado Corazon in Puerto Rico. They're a recently classified Carnegie Institute in service learning. And so there's a lot of campuses that are doing great work. But I think more so it's getting to know your community organizations and partners off campus, including those of us that have the benefit of being connected to a UI.
I have a question. So both Patty and Cassidy are with the Y, but affiliated with the university. is there an affiliation with the Y with many other universities across the country? Do we know that?
Yeah, I think Patty, you talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. So there's not NSE on the campuses where we've got Campus Y. So one of the things I was doing was connecting actually David with our Campus Y folks to see if there might be interest in NSE if those universities aren't interested. But we actually, Springfield College in Massachusetts, Virginia Tech, the WashU, who am I missing, Cassidy? Oh, Champaign-Urbana, University of Illinois. Cassidy and Patty. Am I missing anyone?
I think you said there are about eight or nine right now, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Campus-wise.
and they're different, campus-wise can look really different. Like, you can see my building behind me. At WashU, they're more of an office within, the university. So they can look really different, but they're very similar in terms of vision and mission. But I would say there are a lot of universities or colleges that are really close to YMCAs. And I know there's a lot of YMCAs that would be really interested in partnership. And so, there's many ways we can open that door beyond, our structures. So.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I missed that in the beginning. I might have been distracted.
No, it's okay.
Chatting with David in the beginning. But
No problem.
maybe, do we have one last question? Well, if not, thank you everybody for being here, and a big thank you to our panelists, Patty, Cassidy, and David. It's so awesome to hear from you guys and the amazing things that the Y is doing and partnering with other offices. So thank you for your time and sharing. I hope our students can all get engaged in the future.
Thanks so much. Thanks,
Yay.
Serena, for facilitating.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting us. It's really, when you can remove those barriers and meet each other, it's really great.
Of course.
Thank you.